Welcome to the deep dive. We're here to cut through the noise, get right to the heart of what's happening. Today we're taking on something really important. A deep look into the incredibly complex and often contradictory information around the conflict in Gaza and Israel. Our mission to go beyond just the headlines. We're using a whole range of sources, intelligence reports, official statements, humanitarian accounts, media analysis, to help you get a clearer picture of what's truly at play. Think of it as getting a better lens in, well, a very turbulent world.
It's definitely a heavy topic.
Yeah.
So much emotion, so many different viewpoints. And that's why, thoughtful discernment is just crucial here. What's really striking is how vital it is to evaluate everything, understand the narrative, see how they differ, and recognize their real-world impact on policy, yes, but also on people's lives. So yeah, this deep dive is definitely an exercise in critical thinking.
Critical thinking, indeed. Okay, let's dive right into the on-the-ground stuff shaping recent events. Just recently, Tel Aviv saw this huge protest. Reports say nearly 500,000 people expressing just deep frustration over the Gaza war. And this massive public outcry happened just as the Israeli cabinet was apparently considering, well, taking over the entire Gaza Strip.
Wow, that's quite a backdrop.
Isn't it? And amid all that pressure, Hamas put forward a ceasefire offer, 10 hostages for some Palestinian prisoners. Prime Minister Netanyahu's response seems to be wait and see, but the national demand is reportedly still firm, release all 50 remaining hostages.
Right, the hostage situation remains central.
Absolutely. But separate from those high-level talks, there's this new player on the humanitarian scene, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, or GHF. Their goal sounds direct, maybe even provocative. Get food and medical care straight to Gazans. And they explicitly aim to bypass what intelligence reports and people on the ground describe as Hamas's control, their monopoly over aid.
That's a significant claim, bypassing Hamas.
It is. And U.S. Ambassador Mike Huckabee estimates that last year alone, Hamas allegedly made something like $500 million. The reports say by confiscating, looting, reselling aid meant for civilians. So the GHF is trying to operate differently. In a war zone, mind you. Protected by the IDF, using hired security, delivering thousands of meals, even sought after things like potatoes and onions directly.
And if we connect that GHF effort to the wider humanitarian picture, it really raises some big questions about international bodies, like the UN's role. There's this major controversy, according to official Israeli statements, accusations that the UN actually refused to pick up and distribute reliefs that the IDF had delivered to Gaza.
Refused. So the aid was there but didn't move.
That's the allegation. Aid at the border but not getting to the people. And then there's this alleged numbers problem in aid reporting. Israel says 9,200 trucks got into Gaza in July. But UN reports apparently counted only about 3,500. That's, what, roughly a third?
A huge difference.
Exactly. And this reported minimizing of Israeli aid efforts, well, from the perspective in our sources, it seems to clash directly with claims from the UN Secretary General. Claims about an intentional plan to starve a civilian population. So the big question is, why? Why this massive disconnect? Not just in the numbers, but in the actual delivery of aid. This isn't just stats. It shapes how the world sees the conflict. It influences policy. It fuels narratives that might not, capture the full complexity on the ground.
Yeah, that disconnect you mentioned between reported actions and the accusations, it gets even sharper when we look at some of the really serious claims against Israel. Our sources point out that some major political figures, top Democrats in the U.S., leaders in Australia, elsewhere have used the word genocide. Some are even pushing for recognizing a Palestinian state alongside this rhetoric.
That's obviously a very heavy charge.
Yeah.
Genocide.
Extremely. But the information we've reviewed presents a counter-narrative. It focuses on specific IDF actions that seem to, well, challenge that claim. For instance, military observers report the IDF actively contacting medical staff in Gaza City, telling them to prepare to move medical equipment south, promising alternatives like field hospitals. And, like we just talked about, the IDF is also providing security for that GHF aid distribution to thousands of Gazans. So, from the perspective laid out in our source materials, these actions seem to directly contradict the genocide label, suggesting efforts to limit civilian harm.
It is striking, isn't it, when you lay out those reported actions facilitating aid, warning medical staff, securing humanitarian efforts, the sources argue that the genocidal claims look, well, unfounded. And the source material actually explores why world leaders might have such different opinions. It suggests a few possibilities, maybe political considerations, maybe underlying anti-Semitism, or perhaps just wanting to go along with the flow of international opinion.
Just following the trend.
That's one angle suggested. And there's the argument, mentioned by figures like Ambassador Huckabee or Netanyahu, that, look, if Israel wanted to commit genocide, they could have done it years ago. But instead, the argument goes, they're doing just the opposite, taking steps, however debated, to protect civilians and allow aid. It really forces you to weigh the narrative against the reported actions.
And a huge factor in why these conflicting narratives even exist, why it's so hard to nail down the facts, is the information war itself. Let's really dig into this now. Hamas's propaganda efforts, independent media analysis calls them remarkably sophisticated, a concerted effort.
Not just random posts, but a strategy.
Exactly. Think about the alleged restrictions on reporting. Sources say reporters in Gaza need Hamas's okay, explicit approval. And in the West Bank, under the Palestinian Authority, stories apparently need to be positive. It paints a picture of a really tightly controlled information space.
That definitely makes independent verification difficult.
Immensely.
Yeah.
And we're seeing specific examples, documented by fact-checkers, of alleged media misrepresentation, manipulation even, like claims over 1,000 people killed outside aid sites. One CBS report said 900. Our sources say that's simply not true. Then there was that infamous New York Times front page photo, the emaciated child.
Oh, I remember that one.
Right. Later revealed the child had pre-existing conditions and wasn't even in Gaza. And the retraction, reportedly buried, not prominent like the original photo. It gets worse. Accusations, with video evidence apparently, of U.S. press photographers staging photos, like women with empty pans looking hungry, but then video shows them being coached for the scene.
Wow. Staged scenes.
It really brings to mind that Winston Churchill quote, doesn't it? A lie gets halfway around the world before the truth gets its pants on. Chillingly relevant.
Absolutely. And if we connect this to the bigger media picture, it shows a huge challenge for everyone trying to stay informed. Jonathan Conricus, you mentioned him, former IDF spokesperson. He's quoted in our sources. He called some media outlets useful idiots for just running with Hamas-fed information without checking, which then, he says, demonizes and besmirches Israel.
Strong words. Useful idiots.
They are. And the sources note this isn't new. In past conflicts, 2012, 2014, 2021, Hamas reportedly controlled the narrative, partly by threatening reporters' lives if they didn't toe the line. So the core takeaway here is understanding the how Hamas wages information warfare, controlling access, staging scenes, using emotion, spreading false claims fast. Knowing this is crucial for navigating not just this conflict, but our whole information landscape today. It's about recognizing information as a weapon, used to shape opinion, influence policy, and, sadly, as sources document, fueling things like the rise in anti-Semitism, which really brings up a critical question for you, the listener. In this mess of information, where truth is deliberately clouded, how do you develop the skills to see through it? How do you find reliable information and form your own informed view?
That's the challenge, isn't it? And this struggle for truth, these clashing narratives, they spill over into politics and public opinion, too. Our sources mentioned former President Trump, for example, apparently had a change of heart. Now reportedly argues defeating Hamas is better for everyone after maybe buying into some earlier narratives.
Interesting shift there.
Yeah. And within Israel, deeply divided reactions. You've got that huge protest, 500,000 demanding the war end, hostages back. But then there's also a sizable portion of Israelis who want the war to go on until Hamas is defeated militarily, out of power in Gaza. And Netanyahu, he's caught in the middle, weighing those Hamas ceasefire offers.
A very difficult position.
No kidding. And looking beyond Israel, our sources talk about this worldwide chorus against Israel, coming from nations you might think of as traditional allies: France, England, Canada, Australia. Plus, concerns about some U.S. politicians calling to end support for Israel. It paints a picture of Israel feeling, well, quite isolated on the world stage.
And the implication, according to the sources, is serious. They suggest Israel is facing one of its toughest times in recent history, comparing the weight of it to the Yom Kippur War back in '73. But unlike 1973, there's this added layer of this massive worldwide chorus, often fueled by those manipulated narratives we discussed, pushing against Israel. And in that context, some sources specifically suggest supporting groups like CBN Israel as a concrete way to, quote, stand strong with Israel and push back against the lies coming out of the propaganda machines.
Yeah.
It's presented as a tangible response to these really complex challenges Israel is facing.
So we've covered the tough geopolitics, the information battlefield, the international pressures. And facing all that chaos, all that global anxiety, it's understandable that people feel overwhelmed, anxious, maybe scared. Our sources also touched on how individuals find, resilience, peace, even with rockets flying overhead. It points to a different kind of strength, often rooted in faith, in
Oh, like
community.
that internal anchor.
Exactly. There's this powerful personal story about a man named Roberto, finding deep peace even while Iranian rockets were incoming, with his family, including a newborn, right there. His experience kind of echoes that ancient wisdom from Paul's letter to the Philippians. You know the one. Do not be anxious about anything. By prayer and petition with thanksgiving, tell God your requests, and the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds.
It's a profound passage.
Hmm.
And a key idea that comes through is the meaning of peace itself. In Hebrew, the word is shalom. It's not just, no fighting. Shalom is the presence of something, a flourishing wholeness,
Right.
restoration,
Yeah.
where broken things get repaired, where alienation turns into reconciliation, where death gives way to life. It's comprehensive well-being,
Much deeper than just quiet.
much deeper. And Scripture often connects this deep peace to the Messiah. Isaiah 9 calls him the Prince of Peace, whose rule and authority there will be no end to his peace. And for those in that tradition, Jesus' words in John 14 resonate. My peace I leave with you, not as the world gives, do not let your hearts be troubled. It suggests true peace isn't just circumstance, it's the presence of a living, restoring power. This perspective offers this internal source of wholeness, order, no matter what's happening outside, a personal shalom that can hold you steady.
That idea of shalom, wholeness, restoration, it isn't just internal, is it? People try to create it through actions too. Compassion, community. And that actually brings us to a really heartwarming story, an initiative called the Smile Train. It brings a different kind of wholeness, a moment of joy to kids facing huge battles right inside Israel.
The Smile Train, tell us about it.
Yeah, it's an annual event, happens during the Jewish festival of Purim, and the purpose is simple but so important. Give a day of pure celebration to hundreds of kids fighting cancer and their families. A real break from treatments, hospitals, all of that. It's a collaboration, CBN Israel, Israel Railway, and a charity called Larger Than Life down in Beersheba.
That sounds wonderful.
It really does.
Yeah.
Picture this, a specially decorated train, snacks, sweets, games, shows, great food, all for these kids. We heard about one little boy, Sag, had brain cancer just before he turned 5, still relearning to walk, talk, dealing with so much. And his parents just talked about the immense joy of seeing their kids happy, dancing. They said that fun gives you strength to carry on. It really hits home how vital those moments are when families are under such strain.
Absolutely. The impact of things like the Smile Train, even with everything else going on, is just profound. It speaks to that enduring human spirit, doesn't it? The power of community. These are just quick distractions. They're moments of real family connection. They offer crucial psychological relief, a dose of hope that can genuinely help families keep going. And it underlines the role of groups like CBN Israel, working together to meet needs, bring some light, some joy, some normalcy into really tough situations. It's really a testament to resilience, to human connection, and that shared desire for well-being.
What a journey today. We've navigated some really complex territory: geopolitics, the battle over information, the search for truth, and then also that deep human need for resilience, for hope, even peace amidst all the turmoil. This deep dive has really highlighted some stark contrasts, but also, I think, some enduring strengths in our world.
It really has. And it leaves us, and you, our listener, with a pretty big question to think about. In this age of information overload, where narratives are actively shaped, where truth itself can feel slippery and peace seems so far off, how do you personally build that critical discernment we talked about? And maybe more importantly, how do you cultivate that sense of shalom, that flourishing wholeness in your own life and your own understanding of the world, especially when you're surrounded by conflicting stories and ongoing struggles? It's definitely something to mull over long after this conversation.